3,000 people injured, 1,300 homes destroyed, 2,800 homes damaged, 200 businesses ruined, 5,000 automobiles destroyed. Since 1972, there have been several heavy rain events resulting in flooding throughout many neighborhoods in Rapid City. Chapel Valley, Red Rock Canyon, downtown Rapid City, North Rapid City, the Fairgrounds area, Sheridan Lake Road. More recently, in 2018, Robbinsdale neighborhood flooded, where an unofficial 4.5 inches of rain flooded the streets. Rapid City's not alone in experiencing flooding. Floods are the most frequent natural disaster in the United States. For decades, the national response to floods was to construct dams or levees and provide disaster relief to victims. However, this approach did not reduce losses, nor does it discourage unwise development in flood-prone areas. Private insurance companies were not able to continue to provide affordable flood insurance coverage. In light of the mounting flood losses and the escalating costs of disaster relief, Congress created a federal program to address flooding. 1968, the National Flood Insurance Program was created. The primary components of this program are to enable property owners to purchase flood insurance, identify flood hazard areas on maps, communities adopt ordinances and programs that improve floodplain management. Communities are provided with disaster assistance. Rapid City is a member of the National Flood Insurance Program. Anyone living in a national flood insurance community can purchase flood insurance. If a structure is located in a special flood hazard area, which has been identified on the FEMA flood maps, the owner has a mortgage through a federally regulated lender, they're required to have flood insurance. Homeowners' policies don't cover flooding. So what are flood maps? Flood maps show the community's risk of flooding. FEMA has determined that a 1% chance of experiencing a flood each year is considered a high risk of flooding. Therefore, the 1% annual chance flood is used as the basis for identifying special flood hazard areas on the flood maps. Flood maps are called flood insurance rate maps, FIRMs, or digital flood insurance rate maps. How are these maps made? There's three elements. Hydrology, that's transforming rainfall amount into a quantity of rainfall, of runoff. Hydraulics, how does the water move downstream? The topography, the shape and surface of that area. So engineers take all of this, they put it in a model, and they generate maps saying these are your special flood hazard areas. Prior to 2013, the maps were paper versions that looked like this. To determine if a property or structure was located in a special flood hazard area, the map user scaled from the road center line, and these maps are called flood insurance rate maps. In June of 2013, a digital version of the maps was made available. These maps are much more user-friendly and can be combined with imagery so you can quickly identify if your property is located in a special flood hazard area. These maps are called digital flood insurance rate maps. They can be found both on the city website, Rapid Map, and the FEMA Map Service Center website. So FEMA uses the 1% annual chance to identify the special flood hazard areas on the maps. The special flood hazard area is the area where floodplain regulations and flood insurance purchase requirements apply. So, what does the special flood hazard area mean in Rapid City? Your confusion may be that we never call our floodplain the special flood hazard area. We just call it the floodplain. Maybe this formula will help. The special flood hazard area equals the 1% annual chance flood equals the 100-year floodplain, which equals what we in Rapid City generally just call our floodplain. The level the water rises during a flood is called the base flood elevation. The floodway is the area of our floodplain where the water flows fast and deep. This is the area that must be reserved to discharge floodwaters without causing the remaining portion of the floodplain to see an increased rise of water during a flood. In a few more slides, the floodplain ordinance is discussed. The ordinance prohibits obstructions in the floodway, but allows development in the floodplain if certain elevation requirements are met. This is a rapid map DFIRM. The blue hatch area is the special flood hazard area, or our floodplain. Red hatch is the floodway within the floodplain. The lines with numbers running perpendicular throughout the floodplain identify the base flood elevation. Vicki's going to talk a little bit about what some of our ordinances are that protects this floodplain and floodway.
Thank you, Mary. A floodplain boundary development policy committee was appointed by the mayor in 1992, that's 20 years after the 72 flood, to review the city's policies on the management of Rapid Creek flood hazard area and make recommendations. The committee has convened again in 96, 2000, and 2007. This is to ensure that the adopted policies continue to protect the lives and property of our residents and visitors to the community. The committee recommended adoption of a resolution establishing a Rapid Creek floodplain policy. This policy includes the dedication of 185 tracts of publicly owned property as parkland, install parameter survey pins denoting the location of the 100-year floodway boundary. For those of you that were looking at the last slide that Mary had up, that was that red hatched area. So you have floodplain, floodway, flood fringe. It's that floodway boundary. Install permanent fixtures throughout the greenway, display photographs of the 1972 flood. The established regulations ensure the floodway is reserved. It applies more stringent standards to the canyon environment upstream of Chapel Lane Bridge, including the requirement that the flood hazard zone is applied not only within the 500-year boundary, but the 100-year boundary. Excuse me, not only within the 100-year boundary, but the 500-year boundary. That's important as a non-engineer. When I first came into this field and being respectful of engineers as a planner, trying to really grasp what is floodplain, the 100-year floodplain made sense to me. This is the creek, this is the area around the creek, that's the floodway, that's the flood fringe, but the 500 is that area that's a large expanse out of it. When we're looking at stating that we have regulations that if you're on the upside of Chapel Lane Bridge, the 500-year is restricted. When an engineer explained to me what a 500-year floodplain is, it says if it rains enough to impact the 500-year, that's when NOAA gets another phone call. And so on this side of the bridge within the city, we don't regulate it. If you've got property within the 500-year floodplain, you're not required to get insurance. You don't need a floodplain development permit. We have two ordinances that we've adopted within the city's Rapid City Municipal Code to protect us within this area. Chapter 15 is the flood area construction regulations. Chapter 17 is the flood hazard zoning. We have 931 acres within our flood hazard zoning district. Chapter 15 in summary is the how and where to build. Chapter 17 is what uses are allowed in the flood hazard district. The district establishes uses that are permitted, and the guideline for that is that they have to have a low flood damage potential and will not obstruct flood flows. Permitted uses without structures, that's so important. We try to eliminate or limit structures to the greatest degree possible within our floodway district. These uses would include horticulture, forestry, sod farming, all of our public parks. You see those as golf courses, tennis courts, our walking paths, swimming pools, residential uses, limited to lawns and open space, garden areas, and play areas. So there may be residential lots within the flood hazard district, And if it is within the floodplain itself, you cannot have a structure within that district. You could potentially have your house outside of that area, because some properties that line cuts through diagonally and parts in, parts out. But then you can use the back end of your property potentially as a garden area or just open space. Camping is prohibited. Again, it goes to the fact that we are trying to eliminate any overnight habitation within the areas of flood concern. Uses that would trigger a conditional use would be any structure. Circuses, carnivals, fairgrounds. You may see from time to time that there's a tent put up at Canyon Lake, someone's getting married. That requires a conditional use permit. We require that they put up and take down within a very short period of time, that they have an emergency evacuation plan, that they have a weather radio on site at all times, that the tent is put up with as much flood proofing and guarding as possible. We actually go out and witness them put the tent up to ensure it's safe and to ensure that it can be taken down quickly if we get a warning that there is a flood coming. Marinas, bridges, railroads, kennels, stables. Criteria for a conditional use permit, again, we always lean at, can't have a structure. Any fill, obstruction, storage of material or equipment may be allowed as a special exception, so long as it does not increase the flood heights more than 1 foot. Any fill proposed must be shown to have some beneficial purpose. So you can't just stockpile a bunch of dirt in your backyard if it's in the floodplain just because you need a place to store it. It needs to have a beneficial purpose, and it requires a floodplain development permit. Structures, again, we lean towards they must be only temporary, must be quickly taken down, and they shall not be for human habitation. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mary, and she can go through a little bit more on Chapter 15, which is more about how and where to build.
So I have two hats at the city, well, I have several hats at the City of Rapid. So the first, I'm an engineer. So when I talk about floodplain, I got to talk about my first slides. So now I'm going to talk about the fact that I am the floodplain administrator for the City of Rapid City. And this is the job I feel like I think I make the most difference in Rapid City. I'm a liaison between FEMA, Rapid City, their regulations, our regulations. So Chapter 1532 is our flood area construction regulations. And every time somebody wants to do anything in the floodplain, they're required to submit an application to tell me what they're doing. And this is anything. Development is anything that changes a floodplain. It includes new construction, improvements to existing buildings, subdivisions, storage of materials, grading, bridges, fences. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're doing something in the floodplain, I'm going to find out about it. The floodway is the area within the floodplain where the water flows fast, and I showed you that on a previous slide. So encroachments are prohibited, including fill, new construction, obstructions, any other development, unless you can demonstrate through an analysis that that will not result in any increase in flood levels within the community. This is extremely difficult to do. When FEMA made the maps and designated the floodway, they used a computer model to make it happen. So they're saying to everyone out there, if you want to make a change, you have to prove to me that my models are wrong. The area of the floodplain outside the floodway is where the floodwaters spread out. So development is permitted in Rapid City in this area if you meet certain elevation requirements. So residential buildings have to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation, non-residential elevated to base flood elevation. And as Vicki stated, temporary structures are allowed, but they can only be there for 14 days, and they have to be able to be removed in 24 hours. So communities are encouraged to participate in a national flood insurance program called the Community Rating System. The CRS is a voluntary incentive program that recognizes community floodplain management activities that exceed their minimum requirements for public information, mapping regulations, and warning and response. Credit points are assigned to each activity and accumulated to determine a CRS classification for the community. The CRS classification results in a flood insurance premium discount for all policyholders within the community. Rapid City has been a CRS community since 1992. The city has a Class 7 rating that allows for a premium discount of 15% on flood insurance policies. Credit points are awarded for maintaining flood-related records and documentation. The city has copies of all firms issued to our community. We have elevation certificates for new construction. We have historical flood information. All flood-related inquiries are logged. Rapid City Public Outreach Program includes informational material available at Public Works offices, the public library, and the city website. Outreach projects include flood trail signage, storm drain signage, and the Memorial Walk flood event. In addition, our ordinance minimizes the development in our floodplain. The city receives many CRS credit points for preservation of our open space within the floodplain. The 100-year floodplain consists of over 1,800 acres, and approximately 41% of that area is preserved as open space. Over 930 acres are zoned flood hazard. That is an amazing number in comparison to all the other CRS communities across the United States. Rapid City has adopted FEMA flood maps. We enforce floodplain management ordinances that meet or exceed the minimum requirement of the National Flood Insurance Program, and we are a member in good standing with the National Flood Insurance Program. If these requirements are not met, the city is suspended from the program. So property owners will no longer be able to purchase flood insurance. Federal grants or loans for development in flood hazard areas are not available. Mortgage insurance or loan guarantees will not be made available. And flood and disaster assistance is not provided in an event caused by the flood. So Jeff's going to talk a little bit about our parks.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks to both Mary and Vicki for pointing out that I am the elder on this panel. But I am in good company. Most of the folks that have attended a lot of these programs are my age or thereabouts, and went through the flood and had personal experiences. Those of us that were here during this will never forget how the flood has impacted not only our lives, but also has shaped the appearance and the function of our city. It's been forever changed, and I think part of that is something we look backward toward, but a lot of it is something that we should look forward to, and there's a lot of reason to have hope and optimism. Rapid City has created one of the largest greenways of any community in the country, and we hear from visitors all the time when they come here and they experience the greenway, and just they talk about their own communities and places that they've been, and they've rarely seen a community that has a greenway that actually runs the entire width of the city, and that's something to be proud of. Over 1,200 acres were added to the parks system as a result of the relocation of the homes and businesses that were built along the creek and in the floodway. Some of those parks that were created from west to east are Cliffside Park, or the Brayburn off-leash dog area, Lions Nature Park, Meadowbrook Golf Course, which was a 9-hole course before the flood and is now, of course, an 18-hole course. Jackson Park, where there's a large disc golf course. Founders Park, Executive Golf Course. West Memorial Park and Memorial Park. There were a lot of homes in that area that where now it's all park and open space. This facility right here was created just shortly after the flood, and the Roosevelt Swim Center, the Roosevelt Ice Arena, Market Park, and the polo fields. Those are all some of the new parks and greenways that have been created since this event. Just as a point of reference, the national average for park and open space per 1,000 residents is about 9.9 acres per 1,000. Rapid City has over 20 acres per 1,000, so we're twice the national average of park and open space of communities across the country, which is really cool. That's a great thing. While we are part of this event is to remember those family members and neighbors and friends who lost their lives, and we also honor their memory. We commemorate this tragic event that took place 50 years ago today. We also want to look forward to the future. The greenway and the parks that were created as a result of this event and the years following that are an enduring reminder of the sacrifice to all of those that were affected by the flood, and it's also a lasting legacy to be enjoyed by all who walk or bike the Leonard Swanson Memorial Pathway, which actually stretches 8.5 miles from west to east, all the way from Brayburn Park to beyond Campbell Street. The greenway, as I mentioned, an additional 1,200 acres that came into the park system. The park system actually has about 1,700 acres, and they are maintained by the Rapid City Parks and Recreation Department. It is a major attraction, and certainly this greenway is a major attraction for the locals, the residents, as well as the visitors who come to our community every year. And we, as the Parks and Recreation Department, are firmly committed to the preservation and protection of the greenway. And we do embrace the responsibility that we have to protect this treasured jewel that we have ahead of us here and alongside of us. But at this time, I'd like to bring Vicki up again to discuss this terrific map that we have over here that was created by our GIS department.
Thank you, Jeff. So, Alan, if I would have known that you were going to be here today, you would be the one standing here doing this. Ellen is with our GIS division and a city employee as well. And she has put together a phenomenal map. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it before the meeting, take a moment. It's amazing how she used magic and wizardry to show where roads used to be that are now gone, that didn't get rebuilt after the flood, where homes were, and now it's greenway tracks. So as we're looking at what all she has put together, she looked at the location of structures that were by using aerial imagery from April of 1971, and then comparing to post-flood imagery. Streets not visible under mud were located using mapping from February of 72. The estimated extent of the 72 flood was established by inspecting aerial imagery after the flood. And these slides show you where some of the homes used to be. This one is the Jackson Boulevard below Canyon Lake Dam. So all those little green squiggles are where homes were. And it's just amazing to know that now we go there and we enjoy open space, and at one time that was someone's backyard. And the second one is north of downtown. Again, that's a lot of homes that we've tried to limit down, put in public buildings, no habitation, make sure that everything's out of the floodway, secured by utilizing floodplain development permits and using all floodplain measures of development that are needed. So that ends our presentation today. And again, we do encourage you to step up and look at the map if you can. If you have any questions or comments, if you have a memory of what a time that you recall of why we're here today, you're welcome to share that as well. So yes, sir. And we all wish you farewell. You know, one of the things that we deal with at the city is the city has purchased up a lot of the land that's in the floodplain that's either designated flood hazard district or it's just not desirable for development. And we did that so that people didn't come into town and buy this up and try to put a use in that would jeopardize our floodplain program for the city. While time goes on, land becomes valuable. Everyone's trying to move to Rapid City right now. Businesses are just coveting this area of our community, and they approach the elected officials. They want to buy that land. They'll do floodplain measures. They want to purchase it. They want to put development back into that area. And staff holds firm that that is undesirable. And it becomes very unpleasant from us sometimes in public meetings because we feel that you, the public, have bestowed upon us a trust that as your city staff that are reviewing and preserving the integrity of the floodplain, that we don't forget why we are here with these regulations today and ensuring that we prevent development to the greatest degree possible. But if you should come to notice, either by notification in a newspaper, a news station picks up on it, or you actually receive a letter that says, hey, somebody wants to do something, they're rezoning from flood hazard district to something else, or they want to put a structure in some kind of use in the flood hazard zoning district, we need your support. We hope that you join us in some of these public hearings, you share your concerns, you stand firm with us as we take the positions that we're here to preserve it. We don't always win that fight when it is something that is posed to the elected officials. And Richie, I'm not throwing you under the bus by any stretch of the imagination. He's a great staff supporter on these issues. But there are 10 elected officials that make those decisions, and it's hard to hold firm when it can be a huge economic gain for the city if we let go of some of this prime real estate. So please look at the maps, and we're here if you want to just visit one-on-one with us as well. Thank you for coming today, guys.